London equivalent of MBA. So I was involved with London Citizens, which was the Industrial Areas Foundation organization that started out there. And I got involved with them in 2001. So I was working for a big union in the UK, got involved with London Citizens, was a leader, not an organizer, and I worked primarily on the issue of the living wage. I got asked by a woman named Marcy Cohen, who was at the time the research director of Hospital Employees Union, to come out to BC she had visited London, knew about what we were doing, and it was, when the hospital workers had all been contracted out, the union was desperately trying to bargain up their wages and wanted to build community support, seen what we'd done in London, and asked me and another organizer from London Citizens to come out and spend some time in 2008. And that was also the beginning. Marcy and others helped to launch the living wage campaign in BC. So what is now Living Wage for Families in BC. So, on that visit, we sat around and talked about how we could transfer the work that had been done in London or in England by then to BC. And so there was that beginning. But at the same time, at a second meeting, I came back in the following May, I think, and met Father Lee and probably Robert Dole and a couple of other people that were trying to get an IAF organization started. And I'd, at that point, had an agreement to do a 3-month secondment with Hospital Employees Union, starting that September. And I said, for that 3 months, I'll work with you. Because it was pretty clear that although they had, the Saul Alinsky book, they had never really, apart from doing a bit of training in other cities, had really never been part of that kind of an organization, and they were having trouble figuring out how to get going. So during that period, I did work with them, and we made a lot of progress, and I had to leave. But at the same time, I was able to get them in contact with the organizer in Seattle, who covered that region, and he started to work with them. So then it took them 4 years to raise the money to hire an organizer, and when they did, they offered it to me. So that was 2011, and I moved from London to Vancouver and started building the organization. And in March 2013, we founded. So that was, it was a big, big assembly, and it was exciting, and, we founded the organization. And then I think the following October, we held our first mayoral assembly, and that's when we got the commitment from Mayor Robertson to bring in the living wage for success as an issue, but the success of putting together what was, I suppose, around 30-some organizations to found an organization, very, very diverse, really building relationships across barriers that normally do not get crossed, having people in the room, having the president of the BC Fed sitting next to the Catholic Archbishop at a meeting, and getting them to have a one-to-one conversation with each other, that was actually almost a bigger success, in a way. You can get politicians to agree to do things, but getting people to agree to work together across those kinds of barriers, that was really something special. And that is the strength of that kind of an organization. It isn't the same as a standard campaigning organization. This is about building long-term relationships, people that have a common understanding, but aren't necessarily going to agree on everything. So you find you do the listening, really are clear what people care about, what's going on in their lives, what they care about, what they're willing to change, what really makes a difference to them, and then you work on a limited number of issues that really make a difference, and you persist with those issues. Sometimes they take a long time.
Were you involved with organizing the leaders' debate in 2017, where Mr. Horgan and Mr. Weaver and Ms. Clark were invited to the Italian Cultural Center?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That was, when we'd done those assemblies, we'd had a small federal election assembly just in one riding, just to kind of test the waters. But when the provincial election was coming up, we really said, well, do we really have the reach and the power to do this? And we decided we would chance it. I know this sounds odd, but, I learned a lot of this stuff from my time in London. And if you look at London Citizens, and Neil Jameson, who's recently retired from being the executive director of Citizens UK, Neil would often put forward things that we'd go, oh, come on, Neil, we'll never be able to pull that off. That's way, and he'd just kind of plow ahead. And what I learned from him is sometimes you really have to think big. And so we said, okay, we had a growing group in Victoria who were starting to organize. A lot of our member organizations were provincial. So we said, let's give it a try. And what we did, which was a little bit different than we'd done in previous assemblies, is we asked for partners. We reached out to other, organizations saying, if you have an interest in this, come and help us. And, so that we kind of beefed up our provincial bona fides in a way. And we started really early. We invited all four leaders. Well, there wasn't a leader of the Green Party. We invited Adrian Carr to represent the Green Party, but the other three party leaders we invited. And it was quite funny. We got a very positive, I thought, response from Christy Clark's office early on, saying this is very interesting, tell us more about it. It's early for her to commit, but we'll put it in front of her and we'll get back to you and, let you know closer to the time. And then I kept sending reminders, but I was not getting a yes. And, we got a yes from John Horgan, we got a yes from Andrew Weaver. We had set up, pre-sessions with them to go through the program that we were going to put forward, the asks we were going to make of them during the assembly, getting nothing from Christy Clark. We asked Melissa Skelton, who's the Anglican Archbishop, and who was apparently, very well known to Christy Clark, who's a quite public Anglican, and who was going to be on the stage that night. We asked her to write to Christy Clark, urging her to come, and reassuring her it was not a partisan event, which she did. The Lutheran Archbishop wrote to her and asked her to come. Nothing. The morning of the assembly, I called her office again and said, well, is she coming? And they said, we haven't decided yet. And I said, it's tonight. There are 1,000 people coming. And they said, send us the program again. We'll get back to you. And they called back in an hour or so and said, it doesn't fit with her timetable. So very, we're usually incredibly polite, but that night we ended up putting her name on the chair and leaving it empty, because it was such a, in a sense, an insult to, this massive, very, very representative group of citizens who, had expected her to come. Anyway, the two of them, John Horgan and Andrew Weaver, really kind of hit it off when they were on the stage. They had to be on the stage for quite a while together. And we sometimes take credit for that, starting off their alliance. But in any case, it went really well. We had lots and lots of yeses to the things that we had asked for, which we followed up after the election. And that kind of set up our relationship with the provincial government.